BeTheTalk, episode 174, featuring Brian Benson. Welcome to BeTheTalk. We go behind the talk 7 days a week for tips and techniques to help you change the world. I'm Nathan Eckel, and a talker myself, I'm interviewing others who change the world with their talk. You can too, even if you've never given a talk before. Let's get started with today's show. We are live with Brian Benson. Brian, are you ready to talk?
Absolutely, Nathan. How are you?
Brian Benson is an award-winning author, TEDx speaker, actor, four-time Ironman, radio host, coach, poet, and founder of Reawaken Media. Brian Benson, welcome to the talk.
Thank you, sir. How are you today?
I am doing well. I'm doing very, very well. And
Good.
Your TEDx talk is called Be Yourself to Free Yourself, Finding Your Personal Freedom. It's the kind of talk that you have a person that's achieved a lot in life, and we're always wondering, how did he do it? It's that kind of a talk. So be yourself to free yourself. Please tell us what's in the secret sauce.
Well, basically, in a nutshell, I left my family business about 10 years ago into the unknown. I just felt like I had stopped growing there and I was out of balance, and my intuition was saying, you're supposed to do something else. So I really stepped out into the unknown, and I just continued to follow this intuitive breadcrumbs, and one thing led to another. And my first book kind of accidentally happened as I was working on my own self-growth process. And I just, I was terrified to speak in front of people. And so I stepped out of my comfort zone to take classes and just get more comfortable with that. But so my TEDx talk basically shares my journey of about the last 8 years, and I wove the story through 5 points that I learned and utilized.
And those 5 points?
Well, I'm going to look at my list here. Listen to your,
I love it.
To your Number one is listen to your intuition and be open to whatever comes your way. Number 2 is to step out of your comfort zone. Number 3 is to stay in life balance. Number 4 is to make sure that you have fun and enjoy the ride. And number 5 is to remember that there are no rules and to happily expect the unexpected.
So if I were to summarize all 5 of them, or maybe 4 out of the 5, maybe all 5 of the 5, I would say that is a very mindful philosophy of life.
Yeah, I'm blessed. Everything that just kind of happened for me as far as projects and films and acting and writing, they've all just been an extension of my self-growth process. And so, I've always been one to really try to almost be in the observer role of my own life and see where I can improve things. And so I paid attention as I went along the way. And, I went through up and down the roller coaster like everybody else does, but I paid attention and, tried to do what I could do and where I was at with my own self-awareness, process to learn from it and to help others at the same time.
Brian, there are kind of 2 kinds of people out there. There are people that are really actively trying to better themselves and trying to grow. And then there are the rest of us that really haven't started yet. We haven't made that decision that we need to grow. And there are different areas of life. So I may be growing in business, but not growing financially or in my, ability to control my, my whims or whatever. So it happens. It's a little more complicated than what I just said, but I'd love to.
Yeah.
I'd really like to hear where the journey started for you, where you consider your personal growth journey to start, because we all have a different story. We all have a different starting point, and we have a different ending point.
Yeah. Well, I think, my mom reminded me of this when my first book came out about 10 years ago. I guess when I was little, around 3, I told her that I was put here to inspire people. And so she kind of reminded me of that. And it's interesting. Since, everything has kind of worked out that way. It's like I almost knew my life's mission at a very young age. But when I was younger, I remember my parents had me listen to Affirmation Tapes when I was in grade school. I would just go into the living room and turn off the lights and just put them in and listen on the cassette deck. And so I've always kind of, been one to kind of try to, obviously I wasn't doing it with the awareness that I've been doing it the last 10 years. But I've always been a reader and kind of a seeker, and yeah.
Well, I hear a few things in that. So number 1, at the age of 3, At the age of 3, you wanted to inspire people. And another thing that I hear is that you had a little advantage there, which is wonderful, that your parents were open. They were all obviously already growth-minded people because they had the affirmation tapes, and that was part of the culture of your house, I would imagine.
A little bit. I think I was the only one that might have done that.
You're the only one that actually did it. But.
No, I mean, I have siblings. I was the oldest. I don't really remember. I don't honestly remember why they had me do it. I don't know if it was because of something that might have happened or something they thought that I might have enjoyed, but I do remember doing that.
Well, here's what I know. If you don't first have affirmation and personal growth tapes in the house, the kids can't listen to it. So
yes.
So, I mean, maybe I'm poking around for something that isn't quite there, or maybe it's an oversight for myself, or maybe yourself. But, I mean, I just think there's something there. I mean, your parents had affirmation tapes there. They were obviously trying to attain more than what they currently have. I'm sure they were grateful people, but they were reaching for more. So what can you describe just kind of that environment? Just because many of us come from, if we don't come from a dysfunctional environment, we come from a comfortable environment, which can be just as dysfunctional in some ways. So describe your environment.
Sure. Well, I remember a lot of love. My grandparents were very loving people. My parents were loving people. My parents ended up getting divorced when I was in high school. So, it wasn't totally rosy. Mm-hmm. I remember them having their issues and stuff. And it was kind of a surprise when they decided to do that. But I remember that they had experimented with a few different classes. I remember I'm from Oregon. They went down to Southern California when I was probably 10 or 11 and did some classes down here. And then it might have been around the same time that they had me listen to the affirmation tapes a little bit, thinking that they might be helpful for me. So, all families have their issues. But for the most part, there was a lot of love in my family, and, I feel blessed to, have been brought up with it.
For sure. And, I mean, I've taken a couple of acting classes in college myself. I know a little bit, I know about the Stanislavski method a little bit, and I know about, embody the character and all of that. But what the takeaway for me was from those classes, you have to be pretty comfortable to be an actor. You have to be pretty comfortable in your own skin. And you have to, I know some actors maybe go into acting to become, embody someone else temporarily a little bit. But for me, to really be a versatile actor, I had to be very open with my emotions. People could read me instantly. If I was not being present, if I was not being authentic, that was a bad thing. So, can you describe a little bit of the world that you embody and maybe what led to your success there, Brian?
Sure. For me, acting, I had never planned on acting either. It was just a tool that I used, along with like community college speech classes and Toastmasters and a few other things that I thought might help me become more comfortable in front of folks, because I was terrified to speak in front of people. So I took an acting class with no plans of acting. This was before I moved to Los Angeles. And a few weeks later, I had a dream, and I woke up and wrote down this idea. I met a young filmmaker shortly thereafter. I said, "Hey, I've never made a film before nor acted, but I think I have a pretty good idea. Would you want to do it?" And he said, "Sure." So like 3 weeks later, we're on the streets of Reno, Nevada, making Guitar Man, this 8-minute film. And I'd never played guitar in front of anybody either, but yet here I was acting and doing that on this film. And it did really well at film festivals. And it just kind of woke me up to that world. And it was very empowering, and it made me feel alive. And so I just, somebody else saw that, gave me the lead in their short film. And then I decided to move here to LA via my intuition 5 years ago. And, for me, acting, has just been an incredible, I've studied most of the time that I've been here. It's just been an incredible way for me to open up more and to learn how to feel more in public, and just a lot of it's kind of gone hand in hand with my own ability to really finally love and accept myself for who I am and what I have to work with. Because, I had to work through a lot of that stuff too. So acting, no matter where it leads me professionally, it's just been a perfect tool for me just to become me.
So we've been enjoying this conversation with Brian Benson. He gave a talk at TEDx South Pasadena High. It's called Be Yourself to Free Yourself, Finding Your personal freedom. And we're going to pivot over to you right now, Talk Universe, because in a moment, we're going to be right back with the Blitz Round. People ask, how could I start a 7-day-a-week podcast? It's because of what I've learned from my mentors. Some of the best mentors in history aren't around anymore. They've left hours of one-on-one mentoring behind in their books. Each month at Classics on Tap, I record a new chapter from a classic business book to help you make a difference. Download your first chapter at classicsontap.com. And we're back with the Blitz Round with Brian Benson. Brian, I'm going to ask you a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and the performance of your recent talk. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
First question, were you selected to speak or did you apply?
I was blessed. I was reached out to.
And would you consider yourself a memorizer, an improviser, or a blender?
Oh, I would much rather just speak from my heart. So this was kind of scary because I had to memorize it.
With actors, it's always fun because you wonder whether they're going to say improvise or you have to be pretty good at memorizing. So how did that serve
I wanted to be note perfect. I wanted to be note perfect on the talk, and so yeah.
So that served you well?
It did. Yeah, it did. I really practiced very hard for that, and it worked out all right.
You're an actor, so you're dealing with this all day. But for this particular type of branded talk, did you have nerves, or were you in the zone, or neither, or both?
Oh no, I was definitely. I don't like to use the word scared or fearful. I try to turn that more into excitement.
Excited.
Hell yeah, I was excited. I mean, and nervous, and the whole experience was kind of surreal. And unfortunately for me, there was a curtain to my left with a couple of young students filming from the side, and they were whispering the whole time, and it just drove me nuts. And if you watch the talk, you can even actually kind of see me put my hand off to the side, like, stop it. And thank God I was able to continue on, but I'm a pretty nice guy, but I let him have it when I was done.
All right. Well, yeah. Well, I guess that's the perils of getting accepted or invited as the case. You didn't even apply. It's not even that, most of us have to apply as opposed to being invited. But when you're being invited and it's a high school hosted event and the high school students are speaking, I can definitely empathize and figure why that would be highly annoying. So that may be, we'll chalk this Talk Universe out of the hazards of speaking at a high school based TEDx. I'm sure most of them are amazing.
The kids were great.
Yeah.
And they were all very mature. It's just that they just didn't really realize that I could hear them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, tip, technique, or a tool that helped you, Brian?
Wow. Just be yourself. And, it's interesting. At the very start of my talk, I improvised for about a minute based on a true story that happened to me on the way there. And that actually saying that helped calm me down and really settle in and just lead with my heart with the whole thing instead. You know what I mean? It took the pressure off a little bit. So, if you're lucky to be able to do that a little bit, but just, be you.
Here's the cut for time question. What was the most painful part of your talk that you had to cut out?
I'm not sure what you mean had to cut out.
Cut out for time. So you had a time limit, and maybe, and I find the more experienced the speaker, the less this is a question, but it's always a fun question to ask.
I was lucky. I didn't have to cut anything out because I came in under the time, and I'd practiced it so many times. I kind of had an approximation of how long it was going to be. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I know I was chopping, but it's the same thing. Once you have it chopped down, then I actually come to think of it, I added some because they told me to be present in the moment, and that's what added a couple of minutes to the talk that I kind of.
So you improvised. Good for you.
Yeah. Well, it looked better. It actually looks better scripted on camera. I'm with you, Brian. How did this become how'd you switch this on me? This is funny. All right. Last question in the Blitz round. Back to Brian now. Okay. What was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during or right before your talk, not including the whispering kids?
Well, I would say the whispering kids, but I would just, I don't know if there's anything strange. Everybody's pretty cool. And I just, did my thing. I like to kind of stay by myself before I do something like this, or, just to kind of get centered, and everything went fine. It was really cool in that, I don't know how many people were in the audience. It was maybe 150 or something, but there was a lot of bright lights, and so I couldn't really see anybody. So that was nice. I didn't, but,
you prefer the lights, or you prefer not having the lights?
Both. If I'm speaking from the heart and do what I normally do, I like to see people and be able to connect with them that way. But for this thing, since it was just kind of being, regurgitated, it was nice just to kind of, I don't know, it helped.
Well, that's actually where being an actor is very different. You probably prefer the lights because that it's game time, the same way a professional athlete might. So,
yes. This was such a new experience for me compared to anything I'd ever done before. I mean, everything obviously helped give me and build confidence in me, through the years to get here. But, anything like anything else, you just have to just commit to something and just say, you know what, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to trust that everything that I need is going to come to me. And, I had 3 months when I was invited to write it and come up with everything. So I just gulped and said yes, and just trusted that I would get what I needed, and it all came together.
We've been enjoying this Blitz round with Brian Benson. His talk, Be Yourself to Free Yourself, Finding Your Personal Freedom, is available. You can type it onto YouTube. If you don't want to do that, go to our show notes page instead at BeTheTalk.com. We'll have a link right there. You can watch the talk. Additionally, you can connect with Brian at brianbenson.com, and we will have a link in the show notes page there as well. And in a moment, we're going to pivot right back over to Brian for the final word of advice. Everyone wants to change the world, but not everyone knows the first step. Before you can change the world with your talk, it has to be selected. So grab the templates, timelines, and tools that I use to get my talk selected at BeTheTalk.com. And we're back with the final word of advice for Talk Universe from Brian Benson.
Happily expect the unexpected. I did not have any of these things that I'm doing, the books, the talks, the acting, on my radar at all. I just listened to my intuition and my hunches and just followed them. And I really believe that if we do that, it will kind of guide us to our own version of fulfillment.
Brian Benson, thanks so much for taking time to connect with Talk Universe today and share your wisdom with us.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thanks for listening to Be The Talk. For tips and resources to help you change the world, go to BeTheTalk.com. See you tomorrow.